Welcome to the 94th episode of the Hail Mary podcast. I'm A. Toves, and I'm joined by my husband, the Toves. We're back to talk UTSA basketball. Let's get started.
Well, it's my fault that it's taken us this long to finally get around to doing our UTSA basketball preview. I've had some academic commitments, so haven't been able to really put as much time as I needed to, and college football's on, so that kind of deterred me. I kind of want to see what UTSA is doing to be able to, give some bad analysis from week to week. So HOs has been on top of her game. She's put together a lot of information. I'll try to ruin that by condensing it to like 2 seconds. I'm kidding. And just waiting to do it at this time, it's actually going to help us because we were able to really learn some things about the team.
Right.
We were able to see some games in season, so we could at least break down some of what we've seen based on what we kind of thought was going to happen maybe before the season. We'd be remiss not to start off by saying that we do know that the basketball and volleyball practice facility, which was scheduled to at least ground break sometime in January, has now been moved up to mid-December. So,
very exciting.
Yeah, very good. One of the big things we learned about Austin Clonch was that that's going to be his selling point, and he's talked about that. That the biggest thing wasn't what we can do with the convo, but what we can do with the basketball and volleyball practice facility, because that's where the players are going to spend most of their time.
Right.
And maybe we'll try to sneak in there and spend some time there too. I don't know.
We'll talk about that more when we get into the women's team. But yeah, Toves needs some practice time on the basketball court for sure.
That hurts. Well, let's go on to the team that's been together now for a few seasons. It's the women's basketball team led by Coach Karen Aston. Karen Aston has been gracious enough to be our guest once last season. We will have her back sometime this season as she's would like to come back on. Last season, finished 18-15, 10-8 in conference, lost a heartbreaker to East Carolina in the AAC tournament, the semifinal round. 2 years in a row, they went to the semifinals, which is impressive.
But the key thing about last season was they did get to have their first postseason action in several years by going to getting an invite to the WNIT.
Yeah, I mean, it means that really they're growing and they're getting to at least get that postseason play.
Yeah.
So very encouraging, and certainly something that we want to see the men start kind of aspiring to.
Yeah, we now have a new banner hanging in the convo for the WNIT. So not the championship, but still great to see, another banner and to know that they made that goal of getting into postseason play.
And to remind them of where they've come, because some of these girls have been here for a little while. Let's start out with a couple of coaching updates. I think the biggest one is Alyssa Coleman coming on, joining as a director of operations after having to medically retire. We knew that there were going to be potentially some issues with her playing a few, at least one more season. And we were kind of concerned about it, because you lose someone, you're not really sure who they're going to be able to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a little bit later. It's good to see her there, though. It's good to see her still part of the program. The only other one that I kind of wanted to point out was just Cameron Miles being promoted to assistant coach and coordinator of scouting. Cameron Miles has been here since the beginning with Coach Aston, and we've seen the bigs have some nice success here at UTSA, and I think a lot of it's just owed to not just Karen Aston but Coach Miles. So, all right, so let's go to the current roster and set the base for all this. Obviously, it all starts with Jordan Jenkins.
Yep.
Jordan, what hasn't she done? I guess right now,
Yeah.
She's been such a boon for this UTSA program since she arrived here.
Absolutely. And, this past year, she was coming back off of an injury. We didn't really get to see her for the full season. This year, starting off the season, she really looks like she's back to her old self. You wouldn't know from watching her that she had sustained a serious injury. She really seems like she's trusting herself and trusting her knee.
you always kind of assume that they're just going to come back
Yeah.
and that everything's going to be all right. And yeah, ideally that's what you would want. However, that's not always the case. And we saw her kind of struggle a little bit last season, and she seemed a little hesitant. And I do think, though, that it was good for her. And Coach Aston said as much, because during that time off, she was able to actually kind of work on her shooting stroke. And
Right.
the shooting stroke looks very good this year. It does look like she's really worked on it. And I mean, if you can't like jump too much or do a lot of running, at least you kind of shore that up, right?
Yeah, and the other word that Coach Aston's used to describe her quite a bit in interviews this season is just efficient. She feels like she's, you know, confident. She feels like she's efficient with the ball. Like I said, I think, we're going to look forward to having a great, successful season from her.
So that's where it starts with the UTSA women's basketball team. Here's some more contributors to this team. Forward center Cheyenne Rowe, a junior, just been a kind of a rugged post defender for this team. Honestly, she's brought some more toughness to this team, something that, we certainly have needed. Not that these girls aren't tough, but mostly you need sort of that enforcer that kind of like bang bodies around and, let the opponents know that they can't just come into the lane and, have easy baskets. The next four kind of I talk about collectively because they were sort of the first real recruiting class for Coach Aston, and that's guard Sydney Love, a junior, guard Sienna Gudadaro, forward Maya Linton, and guard Alexis Parker. Those four now going into their third season. First of all, it's weird. Can we just start with that? It's weird to see them now in their third season.
Yeah.
But also, I think the two of us went to the UTSA women's basketball potluck, and the change from when we saw them when they were younger to now has just been, I guess, just a welcome sight to see how they've grown.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can see, the growth and the maturity in the group. And it's just rare these days to talk about, having this many returners on their third year. Basketball is just one of those sports now with NIL and the transfer portal where you tend to see a lot of roster turnover. And we'll talk about that when we get to, kind of the men's side. But just to see this consistency year over year under Coach Aston has been really great and has really helped to contribute to the success that this team has seen.
You can liken it a lot to Coach Traylor. Like,
Yeah.
The UTSA football team, the reason they haven't lost players to the portal, very few, has been because the players just love Jeff Traylor. And you see that this team, this women's team, loves Karen Aston.
Yeah.
You can tell the relationship runs deep, and she genuinely cares about them. And that's something that I think that, you kind of take for granted when you see some of these players leave. So let's get to Sydney Love to begin with. Sydney Love just continues improving. She was kind of thrown into being the point guard in her very first season. And it just kind of felt like, we had some ups and downs, and that's what you get when you have a freshman point guard. Like it's kind of like having a freshman quarterback, right? Like you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to see them make a lot of mistakes, but you know that at some point it's going to pay off. And I think it's paying off already this season. You're seeing Sydney really being commanding, really getting into the lane. And honestly, it's a different Sydney a lot because she's also playing off the ball, and we'll tell you why in a little bit here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just the growth and the confidence in her has been very noticeable. I do think the point guard position is natural for her in terms of the playing piece, but she just doesn't seem like she's a very vocal leader. And so I think that's something where it really stretches her, and it's probably a little uncomfortable for her at times. But to see that, growth in her over the last couple of years where she's become more comfortable being more vocal, I think it's been a nice trajectory for her.
I like that. It has been a nice trajectory, and hopefully it keeps rising, because I think once Jordan leaves after this season, there's going to be definitely a void, and who's going to fill that void? Going on to Sienna Gudadaro, she was really a point guard in high school. She's changed her number from 5 to 1. Really threw me off because when I saw the pictures at the beginning of the year, I was like, there's something different about Sienna,
Right?
And it was because she had a different number. We got to talk to her briefly, And she said, yeah, she's always been number one. So she wanted the chance to go back to that number. And there she is. And hopefully she has a really good season. Looks like she really worked on her shot off season. But I think where she really contributes a lot is just coming off the bench, providing that sort of other point guard mentality. And really, it's her distribution skills. She's very good at finding open players. She's going to throw a wayward pass, but when you're a point guard, you're not always going to have, if you're playing too safe and throwing safe passes, it doesn't always lead to success. So I think she's learning to take those, kind of more mature risks. And, I think they're starting to pay off. As for the other two freshmen from a couple seasons ago, Maya Linton and Alexis Parker, both continue to be contributors. And Alexis Parker actually is seeing a big role this season. Maya Linton is in the starting lineup. You can see her also has grown in confidence. She's actually being much more forceful about taking to the rim. And you can see that she's taken some steps in maturity.
Yeah, but Coach Aston's talked about both Maya and Alexis and their increased playing time this season, and said, a lot of it's really contributed to the fact that they are taking practice seriously, in a different way, that they're, very businesslike in that respect, and that they've really put in a lot of the work that it takes to be a consistent player and to earn starting time.
One of the things that I really like about Coach Haston is the fact that you can tell, and when you're around her, that she will challenge you as a player. She will get the best out of you. So to see them getting there, it's really helping this team, and especially because both of them have some height on them, and that athleticism, it's key for this team. We'll end with the two of the freshmen from last season, forward center Adara Udo and Emma Lucio. Adara Udo is just, I don't know what it is about her, Atovs. I mean, the thing is that, and we've heard it a couple times already at the beginning of the season, but she can be guarded really well by an opponent, yet somehow she finds a way to score.
Right. And she's just one of those players that I think was probably overlooked coming out of high school, and she's really impressed in the last year. You can see that she's made some incremental improvements. And, I think we can just continue to expect to see great things from Adara in the future.
Yeah, she's starting to extend her range, too. There's been a couple times where she's been left alone at 3-point line, and she's hesitated early in the season. But in the last game, she took one, and she made it. So I think it's just getting her to realize that she needs to take that shot when it's open. Those are the returning players. Let's get to two additions from the transfer portal. The first one is Nyanga Goni, Naya for short. She's a redshirt senior from Mississippi State. Started out at Miami. She's 6'4" forward. She just ran the court like no one I've seen before.
Yeah, I think it took her like 3 steps to get across the court. I mean, I've never seen someone with such an incredible stride. And, honestly, there was kind of a joking comment made at the potluck about, we should keep her away from the track and field coach because, he might try to steal her away. But, she really has some incredible speed. And, when she gets the ball and she kind of breaks away, and that she's going in for a layup, and it's going to be just kind of an easy bucket for her because, she can get down the court faster than anyone that they've played so far, and probably faster than anybody that we'll see in the American Conference.
That's a very good point. Because she's a forward and her height, she's going to take on some taller players. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to some transition buckets from her. She's gotten some minutes, and she looks like she's just going to give a different look for this UTSA team.
Right.
I think the star that we have gotten, and I say this more because she's going to be in a very important piece, is Nina De Leon Negron from UIW, previously also from Austin Peay. She's a true point guard. When I say she's a true point guard, I want to make sure everybody understands. We were at the potluck, and we were at the practice beforehand, and you want to talk about a leader. She was getting everybody organized. She made sure everybody understood where they needed to be, how they needed to execute. She was chatty. She was a leader. I mean, it kind of reminded me at times of Frank Harris.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about Sydney, and sometimes those aspects aren't necessarily maybe as natural for her because she's
Right.
not a really vocal person. Nina is the complete opposite. I think I referred to her the first time as a firecracker. I mean, you could just tell that she's got this personality, and of course she's a point guard, so she's shorter, and, she's just like, she is not going to take anything from anyone. She's going to, make sure that everybody knows exactly what they need to do. And I really think she fills a big void that was left by Kira White last season. And she takes a lot of pressure off of Sydney because,
Right.
Sydney then can, move and play at the two at times.
And that's key. Because Sydney, I think, is naturally probably at the college level a two. And Coach Aston has said as much as well. Uh, Before we move on, I just want to say I let her down at the basketball potluck, and
You
this is what
did.
you were talking about earlier. I went out to shoot 3-pointers with the girls, and I didn't realize that my shoulder was as bad as it was. I referenced it against, when we reviewed the North Texas football game, and I said, I'll throw the football, but I'll throw it at a weird angle because that's what works best for my shoulder. Well, apparently, I thought I could shoot a basketball.
Yeah.
Didn't help. But here's why I'm going with this, because Nina passed the ball to me and she goes, "Come on, sir, hit that three for me." I'm taking this moment of silence because I did not shoot a very good three. I airballed it. It was a terrible shot. I was so embarrassed, but I also was in so much pain. I didn't realize just how much pain it would cause me. But I let you down, Nina. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I couldn't even face her. I was like, I can't look at her. She's giving me this look like, what is this guy doing out here? So anyway, if she listens to this, she's gonna be like, I don't remember that, but I'll take your apology. I'm sure she will.
But before we move on from her, she was the All Southland on the All Southland first team last year.
Yeah, she was, and she certainly wasn't all Southland because she was feeding me the ball. So, all right, we'll talk about the high school signees from last season. Just briefly, we did pick up Amelia Dannenbauer, a freshman, 6'4" forward center from Berlin, Germany. She's a tall, lanky post. Kind of brings more height to this UTSA team. One of the things you're going to hear us continue to talk about this women's team is just the height and the length. The coaches have been talking about it, just how much more they have of height and length, and it just pops, just off this team as you watch them play. It will be interesting to see where she is a year from now, after a year with Coach Aston and Coach Cameron Miles, because she looks a little awkward, but she's also coming from overseas. So,
Right.
That's definitely a transition that she's going to have to fit into, coming to UTSA, coming to San Antonio, and then to add, playing college women's basketball. It's a transition. I think the big name from this team is going to be, these freshmen, is Damara Allen, freshman 5'10" guard from Aurora, Colorado. I had tried to look for video clips for her before, and I really couldn't find anything. But now that I've watched her play in some of these first games, she's just a smooth shooter and scorer. There's just a way about her where she just doesn't waste any motion. She's efficient with her motion.
Yeah, and she's already found her way into the starting lineup twice, once at New Mexico State and the other at UTRGV.
Right. And I think that's, well, I know we're missing a player. It also speaks to the fact that she's been working hard enough
Mm-hmm.
to, put herself in that position. And during the practice, you could see she was getting some reps. And again, I think that she might be the star from this. But I do have to mention Mia Hammonds, who I think is also going to be very good for this team. 6'3" guard here from Cibolo Steel. She adds a lot of height and length to the wings. And to be honest with you, from what I saw from her, it's going to take her a little bit of time again to adjust to the game and the speed of the game. But I think she's going to be fine. Like, we're going to have a nice core here. And to round out that core is Taylor Ross, freshman 6'1" forward from San Antonio, Texas, Brennan High School. She looks like a rugged low post scorer and defender.
Yep.
She looks like the old school power forwards from the NBA. They used to they get the ball down low and they're going power move straight to the basket. And everything that I've seen so far of her speaks to that. hopefully she's able to play her way into the lineup and have a few minutes there on the court. Now let's talk about next season. Who is going to be incoming? We have Adriana Robles, 5'5" point guard from Fort Worth. She appears to be the point guard of the future. We talked about Nina being this grad student that's going to be playing here for one season. We talked about Sydney Love, giving her a chance to kind of be away from being the point guard. We get the point guard probably that Coach Aston's been looking for in Adriana Robles. She's got international experience, which is valuable. She's got some good handles. She's got a nice outside shot. And she's a very crafty finisher around the rim. Atos, she just seems like when she plays against some taller players, she's able to find a way to get the shot off.
Mm-hmm. And then the second player from this freshman class or incoming freshman class is a name that I think we'll all recognize. Sima Udo, Adara's sister, 6 foot forward from Plano, Texas. She's been a very versatile player that I think will add some length to the team. And watching her play, you can tell that very much like her sister, she's kind of that diamond in the rough.
Yeah, absolutely. She looks like, as soon as she gets more time with Coach Aston and the rest of the coaching staff, she's going to blossom. But she's definitely going to be somebody that, as you mentioned, is going to add that length to this team. And one of the things that we saw a lot of during really that first exhibition game against St. Mary's was just what that length does. Mm-hmm. They're able to cover up the passing lanes, and it just leads to easy baskets. So just another lanky player to bring in. And the last player is Sanae Bean, 6'3" from New Orleans, Edna Carr High School. She's rated one of the top 5 players in Louisiana. She's a good shot blocker. She's got some power low post moves. Another, I think, player that when I saw her, she's going to blossom after some time here with Coach Aston and Coach Miles. I think she just needs to work on her footwork a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But you see what I think why Coach Aston had been looking at her for at least, I think she said she's been looking at her for a few seasons now. So let us talk about, we have not talked about one player, and Atos is going to talk about her right now.
Yeah, we have one potential roster change. Coach Aston announced that Asia Proctor is currently not with the team. She's dealing with some off-court personal issues. Didn't give a timeline for her return. So, certainly hope that whatever she's dealing with, she gets taken care of, and hopefully we'll be able to see her later in the season.
Yeah, well said. All right, let's talk a couple of preseason accolades. UTSA was picked 5th in the AAC. I'm going to tell you, Atos, I don't think that they'll end up 5th. I think they'll end up higher. However, it also speaks to the competitiveness of women's basketball, because this is a very good team at UTSA that's coming back with plenty of players.
Right.
Yet we're still 5th. Now that's still a long way that they've come under Coach Aston.
Absolutely.
The growth has been amazing, right?
Yeah, the season before she came, I think we won maybe 2 games. So to be talking about being picked 5th preseason, I think is really great. But definitely, these girls want to be talked about in that conversation as in, within the top 3 for sure.
And I don't see why they couldn't get there. Jordan Jenkins named to the preseason all-conference first team. Obvious pick. If you left her off, that would have been just completely egregious. Well, we'll give you some early thoughts. Currently 3-1. Have won against UTRGV, New Mexico State, and UTEP. Lost by 4 to Texas A&M. A game I think they're going to really look back at and regret, because they really had A&M at times on the ropes and they weren't able to close out. But, as we said before, more length and speed on the team. It's really a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because when we watched some preseason, it looked like they were struggling a lot at the 3-point shot. But as they've kind of played into the season, I think we've seen them take maybe better 3-point shots and they seem more confident. So, they're not really a big 3-point shooting team in the first place, but, that's something to definitely kind of keep your eye on as we continue to watch them this season. But I think the thing you noticed the most was that they really were putting a lot more pressure on defense than what we've seen maybe in the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to watch. I mean, because of, like I said before, that length, they're able to play those passing lanes, and it makes it difficult to pass around. I mean, you've got just lanky players that are that are knocking the ball around. Frustrates you as a guard, frustrates you just as a player overall. We do run into some just scoring droughts, though. That's still been a pattern, but it looks like, as Coach Aston said in one of her interviews, that they're maturing and becoming more steady, and they're not panicking when they go through those droughts. So let me ask you this, Atovs. I know we said that they're picked to finish fifth. What are your thoughts on where you think this team ends up, and do you feel like they're even close to their ceiling?
Well, one of the things that Coach Aston talks about as being one of their goals is getting to 20 wins.
Right.
Last season, they finished with 18. I would be very surprised if we didn't achieve that goal this year. Just looking at the schedule, the players, how they're all gelling together, I think it's, would be very reasonable to say that they'll reach 20 or even exceed it. And it really wouldn't surprise me if they went on a run in the conference tournament final. I mean, I think it's likely that they'll end up in that top three. We'll definitely be talking about, postseason play. Again, may or may not be, getting into the NCAA tournament, but I think we'll definitely see this team in a postseason tournament.
He's trying to figure out, like, am my expectations too high? Like, am I expecting them to do something that they're not capable of? But the more I watch this team, I just and maybe it's just my UTSA blinders on, right? Like that could be it too. But really being serious here, this team is very good. They have a lot of different ways that they can come at opponents, and I think they're going to be quite frustrating, especially as they continue to mature throughout the season. And to your point, I just can't see this team not getting deep into the conference tournament and finishing up lower than fifth
Right.
from what they were picked. I would be very surprised if that was the case. That said, you can never predict any sort of things like, injuries, or can they deal with the new expectations?
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to be, one of the challenges for them is, they've been underdogs for so long. Now that they're expected to be a contender, now that these teams aren't going to come into the convo and be surprised by how they play, how are they going to handle that? We've talked a little bit about Jordan Jenkins and, how she's kind of handled, being doubled by, different teams and how she's managed to kind of get herself out of that. But, she's not going to be the only player that teams are going to focus on now. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that. And, one of their biggest tests will be coming up this week. They're going to face A&M Corpus Christi, and that might be a surprising statement to say, but A&M Corpus Christi played Texas A&M right before we did, and they did beat Texas A&M. So for us to have kind of a disappointing loss by 4 to Texas A&M, and then face the team that did beat them, I think is going to be a good measuring stick for where they're at this season.
A-Tobes is just scorching here. So I'll only add this. A&M Corpus Christi won the Southland tournament last season. They went to the NCAA tournament. So that tells you just where that program is as well. And last season, we beat A&M Corpus Christi in Corpus Christi. It took us to go to overtime, though, and we were down by 15 at one point. Now, that was without Jordan Jenkins. So it'll be interesting to see how this game kind of plays out. So
Yep.
It is going to be a very good matchup, and hopefully you guys get a chance to watch this one. All right, let's get on to the men's team. Got a new coach. Talked about him before, Austin Clonch. Let's get Clonch, guys.
That's right. Yeah, and it's interesting kind of talking about the men's team right after the women's because, they're really at the beginning of their journey. And,
Right.
Coach Aston and the women's team are several years ahead of that. So, looking at this team, there's still a lot of questions to be answered. Coach Clonch brought on several assistant coaches who have worked with him in the past. There's 3 that worked with him at Nichols at different times. The coach that he brought on board that I'm the most excited about, though, is Joseph Jones. And that's for a couple of reasons.
Why is that?
Yeah. First of all, he was an assistant coach at Tarleton. And last year, after Billy Gillespie got sick and was not able to coach for the remainder of the season, Coach Jones took over and ended up getting named the WAC Coach of the Year. It's just incredible for us as a program to be able to recruit away a conference coach of the year, to become an assistant. I mean, that's kind of like Coach Trailer going to the MAC or Conference USA and being able to recruit one of their coach of the years as a defensive or offensive coordinator. Like, it's just really kind of unheard of. And of course, because he was at Tarleton, which was also one of my, because I'm an alumni of Tarleton, I watched a lot of what he did last season and was really impressed by how he led that team. And so have high expectations for how he's going to lead the UTSA team.
And really, to me, it gives a really good sounding board to Austin Clonch. Austin Clonch has been at Nicholls State, and that's Southland Conference. So to kind of see like maybe about the same skill level, kind of basketball level between WAC and Southland, I mean, you'll take all the advice you can get. So, obviously, what a good pull on Joseph Jones. The rest of the coaches, honestly, I think look really good. So, I think there's hope, and then that's what helps, right? Like,
Right.
whereas we're talking about expectations, now our hope
Yeah.
has arisen over here with this team. And as we look at it, it's a pretty experienced team, although they really haven't played together much, because there was the player that stayed, Naz Mahmoud, sophomore, 6'5", 180 from the Austin area. It was hilarious last season when Christian Tucker was like really making a big play about him being really the only ones that stayed. And that was Naz's freshman year, so he really couldn't kind of go in on Christian Tucker, with that. But this year, Naz becomes the Christian Tucker like player.
And I do love that on his Twitter page or X page, for his cover picture, it's like him sitting on the bench at the end with this empty row. It's like he kind of leaned into the fact that, he was the guy that stayed behind.
What's that, Christian, right?
Yeah.
So let's go through some of these players that we've seen play so far, and, we'll probably hear a little bit more about this season. We'll start out with guard Zach Gonsolin, redshirt sophomore, 6'1", 175 from TCU. Didn't look like he played too much last season, and I will also question whether he is 6'1". I say that because I was able to kind of look at him eye level, and I'm not a tall man.
Yeah.
So
I think you'll hear that Toves will question quite a bit the height of some of these players, simply because, we do have our seats on the court side. And so, you're able to kind of see them up close and personal and really, at the end of the game when they walk by, get to see them more eye to eye. And it's like some of them, I just think that there's a little bit of an exaggeration going on in terms of how tall they are. But, hey, whatever it takes.
Look, I think Zach's going to probably try to carve out a role coming off the bench. As much as we're kind of joking about, what his height is, safe to say that, as I said before, even during the women's part, he could definitely take me down during playing basketball. So certainly not trying to take anything away from Zach there, but I'm not really sure what that role is going to be, but certainly he could carve out something and at least bring some experience playing in the college level. Our next guy is David Hermes, junior forward center at 6'10", 225 from Indian Hills Community College. He's originally from Sweden. He really just looks like a guy is that kind of almost end of the bench guy that, kind of rough and tough, kind of rugged, and is going to just kind of bang bodies with somebody. And really he's just in there to kind of use up some fouls, but he's also a nice player to have to see if you can kind of develop a little bit more. Maybe within this last season, last 2 years that he's going to be playing, and see if you can get something out of him, a little more from him, and see if you can maybe develop him into at least maybe coming off the bench a little sooner.
Yeah, the nice thing about him too is that he's had some experience playing internationally. He was a power forward for the Syria national team in 2023 in their basketball World Cup Asian qualifiers. So, just having some experience playing not only at the college level, but then also internationally, I think is going to be, a nice blend for them.
One thing I didn't mention when we talked about, Adriana Robles, a future freshman for the women's team, is that playing internationally, you get kind of that, they can get raucous, and those gyms aren't as aren't like our pro gyms. They are very much like the college gyms. So, you know, there are fans like right on top of the court.
Hmm.
So that's a really good point that you brought up. That him playing in all these different environments really could help, and especially something that he could pass on to the rest of the players. All right, let's talk about Raekwon Horton, senior forward center, 6'6", 215 from James Madison, hybrid forward. Again, one of these guys that's kind of a athletic, lanky wing type player, and there's a lot I think to like about the way that Austin Klonch is putting together a team, but you can kind of start seeing this theme of athleticism and being able to shoot from outside and run.
Hmm.
And I know that that's some things that he has said before, but it's easy for a coach to say that this is what they want to do, but to actually have a team that kind of matches that desire is different. And Raekwon, from what we've seen, has been pretty good.
Yeah, and one of the moments that he had at his previous school, James Madison, he hit the game-winning three in overtime to upset number 4 Michigan State in their season opener. And just having the experience of being in those pressure situations and being able to come in clutch, I think is going to be really important for this team. To know that they have that guy that they can really rely on and who's been there in those big moments.
Really good point. And, add that to like the David Hermes who played, internationally. You start seeing, again, a theme, kind of playing in different environments and these different moments. I think Raekwon's going to do well. I think, obviously, what you really hit upon and that I really want to say real quick is I guess he's a guy to watch out when it's late in the game and it's close. And so he might be the guy taking that shot. All right, let's talk about Marcus Smurf Millender, sophomore point guard, 5'11", 180 from South Alabama. I like him. I'll tell you this, Atobes. I like, first of all, the fact that he's a sophomore because he's another kind of early building block for
Right.
Austin Klonch and this talented coaching staff.
I thought you were going to say you like that he goes by Smurf.
I do like that too. That's fun too. I like him. He's short, so yeah, well played. But I do like that he's got he shoots like 43, almost 44% from the 3-point line. From what I've seen so far this season, I like the way he plays. I think that there's some things to build upon there with him, and hopefully he dons UTSA jersey for the next few seasons. All right, let's talk about Damari Monsanto, super senior, shooting guard, 6'6", from Wake Forest. One of the things I liked about him, too, is that he shot well from outside. Another guy that's kind of, been to a couple of schools, but I like his size, and I like what he's been able to bring to the team so far. All right, we'll move on to Mo Njai, senior center, 6'11", 250 from SMU. Also had been over at Eastern Michigan. He's just a power guy, but I like the way that he kind of roams the middle of the court, or I should say, the middle of the paint. He's the type of player that's going to deter other opponents into kind of roaming freely. I kind of talked about it with like Cheyenne Rowe. So this is that same type of player. Mo can also kind of hit from outside. So you keep seeing this theme with some of these players with Austin
A little
Klonch.
versatile.
Yeah.
The thing about Mo, he did have an injury early in the season, so that'll be something to kind of watch the first couple of games. But he did also recruit his brother along with him. So his brother's a freshman, Babukar. He hasn't played yet. Not sure if he'll probably redshirt this season. It would be my guess, but we'll definitely see someone very similar to him in the future.
Yeah, and again, building blocks, right? That's a big thing. All right, we got Jaquan Scott, senior power forward, 6'8", 230 from Mississippi State. Jaquan just he seemed like he took a knock in this last game that we saw against Arkansas Little Rock, and hopefully he's okay. He looks like a guy that's really going to be very much a kind of a stretch four at times. He bangs around. Once again, though, a guy that can get up and down the court. So you start seeing the kind of Austin Klonch way of wanting to have every one of those guys being able to get up and down the floor. And while it's not like, I would say it's not a style of play of, kind of a bunch of frenzy, it does give him that option to have a bunch of different players that allow him to maybe play a little at a more frenzy pace. And I think Jaquan is going to be really good in that role. Uh, Also, and the guy I really kind of wanted to get to was Jonavius Smith, redshirt senior, forward center, 6'9", 200 pounds from Buffalo. Also played at Seton Hall. I like him. Much like Smurf, there's this kind of springiness to him
Yeah.
that I liked. Much like Mo, kind of patrols the paint and is able to really looks like a shot blocker.
Yeah, he's kind of funny though, on the court. He is definitely the guy who's going to show his emotions. Like there were a couple of times, I think it was during the Trinity game when he got a little frustrated, and being that close to the court, we knew exactly what he was thinking and feeling because he just said it out loud. And so he's definitely got a fun personality, I think.
Hopefully he was able to carve out a nice role with this team, and I think he can coming off the bench, being either like the seventh or eighth man. He just seems like a guy that you want on the court just because of his versatility. So, looking forward to see how he does this season. As do I want to see how Skylar Wicks does. He's a redshirt senior, small forward, 6'6", 190 from UIW. Yeah, that's right down the street. I guess him and Nina decided to come up to the big time at UTSA.
That's right. It's interesting because I actually remember Skylar from the UIW game when we played against him, because he really did have a big night against us. He scored 24 points in that game, and there were times where it just seemed very frustrating that we couldn't quite shut him down. So I'm glad to see that he is on the other side of the court now.
We don't have to worry about him.
Yeah.
He looks another versatile guy, a guy that looks like it just adds a little bit more height and length to this team. And from seeing him play, like, it just seems like I'm not sure what his role on offense is going to be yet, but defensively, he's certainly going to make his opponents work hard. So whoever he gets to guard against, you better bring your lunch pail because he's certainly going to make you work on it. All right, next guy is Primo Spears, senior guard, 6'3", 185 from Florida State. The reason I waited this long to talk about him is because currently I believe he's the star of the team.
Right.
Combo guard, shot 39% from the field a year ago at Florida State, 29% from three-point. Don't let that deceive you. I think that Florida State really didn't have a very good year last year, or at least the year that they wanted, and I don't know that it put Primo in very good spots.
Yeah, if you go back and you look at his stats from previously when he was at Georgetown, I mean, he consistently had higher stats there. So I think that's probably the case, that he just didn't have the best opportunity while he was at Florida State.
Endless energy is what I'm going to say. You're right about the stats, because what I saw on the court is a guy that he could play 40 minutes and play at the same level. Like there's no drop off of intensity. He just looks like he's just got a constant motor, and he's going to be fun to watch, especially when we kind of look at our last player, Terrion Scuda Joseph, senior shooting guard, 6'3", 180 from Southern University. Scuda is going to be definitely a scorer for this team, and is going to add some much needed scoring punch, especially to play off of Primo and then, probably Smurf as well.
Right.
Again, versatile. And while we haven't seen him play, it's mostly because he's working through some eligibility issues, and we're not really sure when he'll actually be on the court. But once he comes on, I think it's going to be, like I said, that needed boost that came off. Kind of think he's going to be a lot like Juice last year when he came. Hopefully at the end of the semester, where you kind of see him and you're like, we needed something to kind of kickstart this team into the right direction, and hopefully that's Scuda.
As we kind of talk about this team, one of the things that I think, we're really trying to get a good idea of is what's that culture that Austin Clunch is building.
Right.
And, he talks about the code. It's kind of his culture. Embrace the moment, be a great teammate, earn the right to win. Those are kind of his three, mantras that we hear him talk a lot about. And, I think we'll probably hear him talk about that more throughout the season. But it was interesting, very early in the season, he's already had kind of a moment where it sounds like his code's been tested. This last game with Little Rock, we were shorthanded. And while he didn't really get into a lot of details post game, he did mention that there were some players that were missing. It was not injury related, and that the guys who did play had earned the right to be there. And so, kind of took from that maybe something had happened and that there was a reason why those guys, weren't playing. He did mention that all of them would be back this week. So hopefully, whatever happened, whether it was, conduct issue or, violation of rules or what have you, hopefully that's all been rectified. And we'll get to continue to see really what this team can become.
Kind of interesting to see that, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to if we've criticized Coach Traylor for, like, here's Coach Clonch just immediately making sure that this is what you're upholding, this is what you're doing. And that's how Coach Traylor started.
Yeah.
All right, Atos, I'm about to shock you with something. 2025 signees. That's right. We've got some high school players that are coming in.
I know. Isn't it crazy? Just to think about the fact that we're talking about basketball signing some people on National Signing Day.
Well, men's, right?
Yeah, men's basketball. Yeah, exactly. I mean, these last couple of seasons with our men's basketball team, it felt like we were down to the wire every single year talking about, who was going to sign and if we had a roster. So it's really exciting to see that we have, some continuity coming in place.
Totally agree. And I give you with the first one, Dorian Hayes, 6'4" guard from Ridgepoint High School in Missouri City, Texas. He's a 3-star, ranked 14th in the state of Texas. He's the son of former NBA player Chuck Hayes. He said he wants to play in transition and shoot threes, which sounds a lot like what Coach Clonch wants to do. And funny enough, that's exactly what Coach Joey Brooks sold him on. And, he mentioned that in an interview and just talked about the fact that he liked that style of play, and that was something that really interested him in, and he felt like he could succeed at this level. So, his dad had always told him to make his own legacy, and here he is coming to UTSA to potentially get that one. He's got a nice shooting stroke from the video I was able to watch. I'm not sure what his ball handling skills or defense look like, as the highlights really focused on him just shooting. He could get to the rim, and but it was a lot of just kind of receiving passes as he cut towards the basket. So again, he can finish, but I haven't been able to see more of him. Once I kind of watch a little bit more and maybe get some more video on him, I'll certainly update everyone. But I will move on to the other signee, Caden Rayfield, 6'8" forward from Phoenix Prep in Arizona. Phoenix is PHH because it's a prep school. So that's why you heard me go Phoenix. He's originally from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He's a 3-star, ranked 16th in the state of Arizona. I liked him because he's got nice size, some good length, something we've been talking about throughout this entire podcast about both teams. He very much looks like stretch 4, can run and shoot from 3-point land. Again, seems to be staples with, Coach Clonch here. But he also looks solid defensively. He did a very good job of making sure that he had body control when he went up and challenged the shot of a bunch of these, opponents. And that's just something that I really want to make sure that, some guys get a little clumsy and they just run right into, opposing shooter. But it didn't look like Caden was doing that. So hopefully, get a little time over here, maybe get a little Joseph Jones working with him. This kid's going to turn into something. All right. So with that, let's kind of talk a little bit about the early thoughts of the season, some of the preview. I mean, the preseason, they were picked 11th, tied with Tulane for second to last, Rice being last. I don't think that there's really any way we would have been picked any higher, right? AJ's?
Yeah, I mean, you have a new coach, you have a new coaching staff, you have a brand new team. I mean, it's kind of hard to expect that you're going to be ranked higher than that. They're in a good position in the fact that, they can likely exceed expectations. And, I just don't know that anybody really knows what to make of them right now. And frankly, I'm not sure they know what to make of themselves just yet. Clonch said in his weekly press conference this week that the coaching staff was really kind of going to use all of the games, their scrimmages, their exhibitions, look at the film, and then really try to hone in on their identity and what they really want to be. Coach Clonch said offensively, They're trying to determine, do they want to be a 2 big or a 4 guard team? Defensively, he called him a jack of all trades, master of none, and said he really wanted to decide what exactly it is that he thinks these guys can be good at now that he's seen them on the court. He has his ideas about what he wants to accomplish long term but I think he's really trying to hone in on, okay, with the guys we have, the way that we've played so far, what's going to be the best formula for this season, and then, build to what he wants in the future.
And that's really what we expected, right? Like there wasn't like an expectation that we thought that Coach Clonch would bring in his style and just go, this is my style, you got to fit it.
Yeah.
That just seemed like unrealistic, especially with the team that he had kind of patched together. I mean, he did a very good job, I think, of bringing in players that are going to be close to what he's going to have in the future, but it's just unrealistic to immediately expect them to fit that right away. And, there were some things that we noticed. I noticed when they were playing, especially against Bradley on the road, they did a very good job when they started out on defense. They did a good job switching. And that was something that UTSA really struggled under Coach Henson. Like, even when they had some players that had played here for a little bit, and there wasn't many of them, but those guys that were there, they just didn't switch off very well. Like but the communication was much better between these players. So, I think it's going to take a little time, as you said, and obviously Coach Clonch thinks, but what you talked about, where Coach Clonch wants to see what kind of offense and what kind of defense they want to be. I don't think we're going to expect to see really that solidified, at least in my opinion, until probably later in December.
Yeah. I mean, he's talked a lot about the fact that, every game he wants to try to take some steps forward. And, the team that you see in November shouldn't be the team that you see in December, shouldn't be the team that you see in January. He wants to kind of build up to the point that by the time they get to January, they're playing, their best basketball, or they're starting to play their best basketball as the season goes along. But we did get to see a little bit of emotion offense, which, we kind of both smirked at a little bit because, there's been a lot of talk about having emotion offense at UTSA under prior coaching staff, and it just never really seemed to, become a reality. But you can see with this team that will be something that will be a staple of their offense going forward.
It's a very good point, because what I saw them on offense, even though they haven't really been hitting shots early in the season, they really have looked like they've been moving the ball at times, and they're positioning themselves well, and they're kind of moving as one. Again, still kind of working through some issues, still kind of trying to figure each other out. But I'm just kind of looking forward to, as Coach Clonch has said, see where they are in the next month or so. And by the end of the year, at least 2024, see how far they've come from what we've talked about now till then.
So next up for the guys is the Trojan Turkey tip-off in Troy, Alabama. That's a lot of T's right there.
I was going to say, that was really impressive of you.
Yeah. So they've had a little bit of time between their game at Little Rock to prepare for this. They'll be playing Monday, November 25th versus Troy. That game right now is, the time is TBD. It will be on ESPN+. And then they will play on Wednesday, November the 27th against Merrimack. That time is TBD right now as well. And then they'll be back home in the Convo Saturday, November 30th against Houston Christian at 3 p.m. Before we go, UTSA announced the 26 players that will participate in Senior Day this week for football. A couple of redshirt juniors are participating, including Chase Allen, Walker Beatty, Dan Dishman, Zay Frazier, and Willie McCoy. Perhaps a couple of names that we weren't quite expecting. Doesn't necessarily mean that all of them will be leaving, but certainly if they're participating in Senior Day, they're weighing their options right now.
Right.
Two of the notable players that are not participating are JT Clark and Vinley Tatafu. Coach Traylor said that JT is going to have a surgery on his knee, and then he's going to make his decision from there. So it sounds like he's still trying to weigh, what his options are. He didn't say anything specifically about Vinley, but given that he was injured so early this season, I think it's probably a good guess that he'll try to redshirt, get a medical redshirt, and then return next year. But again, just because somebody participates in senior day or doesn't participate in senior day, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to leave or be back. It'll be really interesting. This is the largest senior day that I think we've had, certainly in the trailer era and probably in UTSA history or in a long time in UTSA history. So I would expect that if you want to attend senior day and see that presentation, you should probably get in the dome get in the dome early, because this is going to take a lot longer than our typical senior day would. In other news, the coaching carousel is in full swing in the American Conference.
Oof.
In addition to the openings that we've already talked about on the pod, this week FAU parted ways with Tom Herman and ironically rehired the DC that Tom Herman fired to be the interim coach. Like, just sort of I don't even know what to say about that, but yeah,
I'm speechless. I mean, right. I thought I had something to quip to you about, but I can't.
Yeah. And then additionally, and no surprise to anyone, Charlotte fired Biff Poggi.
Wow. I did not see that one coming. I really thought that they would wait until next year after UTSA beat them.
It just seemed like it was a trend, right?
Yeah.
So if you're keeping score, that means that the head coaching jobs that are open right now in the American are ECU, Rice, Temple, FAU, and Charlotte. And then the defensive coordinator position at UNT is open. And if you're also keeping score, that means, along with Kennesaw State, that every Owls team in FBS has an opening at head coach.
It's crazy.
It's just a bad year to be
bad.
An owl.
A bad owl, really.
Yeah, and they none of them had good records.
No, they didn't. And to be honest with you, like, I guess a couple of them you could say maybe are surprising because they didn't finish out like their second season. Biff. Well, I mean, you could see the writing on the wall with Biff early on. But Tom Herman, honestly, we thought, what is he going to do next season? That's what we talked about in the last pod. So this is interesting to see that these AAC teams are making moves. AJ, I'm going to ask you this real quick. Do you think Tim Pernetti has maybe informed the athletic directors that in order to stay at the top of the G5 with the Pac-8 or whatever they are now, kind of muddling along, and they weren't able to steal some of the AAC teams, that he made it known to some of these athletic directors that, look, you guys are going to have to figure out how to get up here because we can't be getting baggage at the AAC.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, we've talked about how important it is that the rest of the conference be competitive so that, when we look at, the potential of having an AAC team make it to the playoffs and be that G5 representative, that they're looking at the American as that top G5 conference. So I don't know whether it was Tim Pernetti or just these athletic directors understanding that was something that was important. I'm sure it's tough for these guys to, be there for a year or two and then, see turnover again. But I think, these athletic directors are looking at their programs and saying, we've got to get some momentum. And a lot of these coaches just were not really making any strides.
Well, one thing that Temple said when they let go of Stan Drayton was, we see where we're at and this is not where we want to be. We believe that there's greatness here. So absolutely, I think everybody wants to they see the opportunity and the AAC could provide them into getting into that playoff if they have a really good team. And again, this is good. I think Eric Morris should watch out.
Well, I think Trent Dilfer should be the one watching out, man. I mean, he's got to be on the hot seat at UAB, right?
If he's not out by the end of the season or even after next week, I'd be incredibly surprised.
Right.
If there's been a hire way worse than Biff Poggi, and Biff was a bad one, it's Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer did not come through with what I mean, we all thought it was kind of a weird hire, but I also think that it was a hire that could pay off if he was prepared for that position, and it was clear he was not prepared for it.
Yeah, and some of the comments that he's made, it certainly sounds like he's probably turned some fans and boosters against him. So I'm not sure that he's got a lot of supporters in his court. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us. Thanks for joining us on the Hail Married podcast. I'm Atovs.
And now the Toves.
We'll be back to wrap up our victory against the Temple Owls next week.
Birds up.